Are getting
Nancy
some breaking
Guthrie hit
news
with
in
explosive
the
night
investigation
raids
into the
inside family
disappearance
homes
of
instead of
Nancy
bringing
Guthrie.
answers. This investigation may have just produced even more questions. For 7 days, people expected the picture to become clearer. Investigators would follow leads, eliminate possibilities, and narrow the focus. That's usually how these cases unfold. But in the Nancy Guthrie case, the opposite appears to be happening. Alleged ransom communications. Late-night law enforcement activity. Searches in places investigators rarely examine unless they believe something important could be hidden there. And comments suggesting that officials may be moving closer to a resolution rather than simply continuing a search. What makes this development so unusual is not any single event. It's the number of events happening at once. Every new update seems to point in a different direction, yet somehow all of them connect back to the same central question. What happened to Nancy Guthrie? 7 days after her disappearance, investigators were no longer operating only in daylight. Reports from the weekend described activity continuing well into the evening at locations connected to the case. Observers noted multiple unmarked vehicles arriving near family property just a few miles from Nancy's home. Deputies reportedly entered a residence that appeared unoccupied at the time, while reporters watched from outside trying to understand what was taking place. What caught attention wasn't simply the presence of law enforcement. It was the way the operation unfolded. Lights remained mostly off inside the home. Occasional illumination appeared in different rooms, then disappeared again. At several points, flashes resembling camera photography were reportedly visible through the darkness. For journalists covering the scene, it was unusual. Active investigations certainly involve evidence collection, but nighttime operations inside darkened homes naturally generate speculation. Was forensic documentation taking place? Were investigators examining something specific? Or was there another explanation entirely? Officials did not publicly explain the purpose of the activity, leaving observers to piece together only what they could see. One detail stood out. Some viewers immediately wondered whether luminol testing might be involved. Luminol is commonly associated with crime scene investigations because it can reveal traces that are difficult to see under normal conditions. Darkness is often necessary for that process. However, observers also noted the absence of some of the protective equipment normally associated with extensive forensic testing. Whether that observation means anything remains unclear, but it added another layer of mystery to an already confusing weekend. After several hours, deputies reportedly exited the residence carrying items that appeared to have been collected as evidence. No public explanation followed. No press briefing clarified what had been found. Reporters documented what they observed and moved on to the next development. Because there was another development. Behind Nancy Guthrie's property, investigators reportedly focused attention on an underground structure. Witnesses described officials removing a large cover and using specialized tools to examine what was below the surface. The image immediately drew attention because underground tanks are not locations people casually associate with missing person investigations. Yet investigators often follow evidence wherever it leads. Sometimes that means examining vehicles. Sometimes electronic records. Sometimes areas that seem completely unrelated until a specific lead points in that direction. The sight of officials probing beneath the property naturally generated concern. People began asking what investigators believed might be hidden there. Was it simply a precautionary search? Was it based on newly obtained information? Or had evidence emerged that required investigators to examine locations previously overlooked? Publicly, there were no immediate answers. The timing made the search even more notable. Earlier statements had suggested that extensive searches around the property had already been conducted. Now investigators appeared to be revisiting the area with renewed focus. Whenever law enforcement returns to a location, observers inevitably wonder whether new information changed the direction of the case. At the same time, another aspect of the investigation continued attracting attention: the timeline. Timelines are critical in missing person cases because even small changes can alter how investigators interpret events. Earlier public descriptions of the morning Nancy disappeared suggested one sequence of events. More recent explanations appeared to present a different timeline. According to updated statements, the period between family members realizing something was wrong and contacting authorities may have been shorter than initially understood. That adjustment immediately became a topic of discussion because timelines help establish what investigators knew, when they knew it, and how quickly responses occurred. For analysts following the case, the discrepancy mattered. Not necessarily because it implied wrongdoing, but because consistency is important in any investigation. When details change, even innocent explanations often generate public scrutiny. Questions also emerged regarding how concerns were first raised that morning. Reports indicated Nancy had not physically attended church services in person for some time, instead participating remotely. That detail led observers to ask how someone would have known she was absent on that particular day. There may be straightforward explanations. Friends often communicate directly. Family routines may have created expectations. But until those details are publicly clarified, speculation continues. Then came perhaps the most emotionally charged element of the entire case, the alleged ransom communications. Statements released by family members appeared to reference receiving messages from whoever might be responsible. The wording drew significant attention because it sounded deliberate, almost as if every sentence had been carefully selected. Experts familiar with hostage situations often note that public statements can serve multiple purposes. They may communicate with the public. They may reassure investigators. And sometimes they may be directed toward the person or people at the center of the crisis. Whether the alleged communications are genuine remains one of the biggest unanswered questions. That uncertainty is important because high-profile investigations frequently attract opportunists. Individuals with no connection to the case sometimes attempt to exploit public attention through hoaxes, false tips, or fabricated demands. Investigators therefore face the difficult task of determining which communications are credible and which are distractions. Reports suggested that monetary demands may have escalated over time, with deadlines attached. If true, that could indicate negotiation tactics. It could also indicate something else entirely. Without official confirmation, every interpretation remains speculative. Meanwhile, investigative activity continues expanding. Surveillance footage is reportedly being reviewed. Witnesses are being interviewed. Physical locations are being re-examined. Evidence collection appears ongoing. And officials continue emphasizing that not all information can be shared publicly while an active investigation remains underway. That creates a strange situation. On one hand, the public sees movement everywhere. Vehicles arriving at night. Searches behind homes. Evidence being collected. Discussions about ransom demands. On the other hand, the most important answers remain hidden behind the walls of the investigation itself. Nancy Guthrie is still missing. 7 days have passed since her disappearance, and despite the intensity of the search effort, the central mystery remains unresolved. Yet the activity over the weekend suggests investigators are continuing to pursue leads aggressively. Whether those leads point toward a breakthrough or simply another set of unanswered questions is something only time will reveal. For now, every development seems to reinforce the same reality. This case is still moving. New information is still emerging. And somewhere within the growing collection of searches, timelines, evidence reviews, and alleged communications may be the detail that finally explains what happened. Because right now, the investigation is not getting smaller. It's getting bigger.